Have you ever wondered what truly happens after we die? What if everything you were taught about the afterlife, about heaven, hell, and judgment, is only a fraction of a hidden truth? Imagine for a moment that the fate of your soul isn't decided by what you've believed, or by what traditional teachings have told you, but by forces that have remained invisible, waiting beyond the veil of ordinary perception. What if these forces have been quietly shaping the destiny of every human being, yet almost no one has known about them? Some scholars, like Jonas, suggest that the truth about the soul's journey after death was deliberately hidden, obscured, or even lost over centuries, buried beneath layers of interpretation and institutional control. For thousands of years, secret teachings known as Gnosis hinted at a reality far more complex than the simple paths of reward and punishment. The Gnostics believed that after death, souls face a series of hidden trials and encounters, realities that the mainstream narratives rarely mention. They spoke of guardians, of cosmic rulers, of the intricate mechanics of the universe, and the very forces that could trap or liberate a soul. These ideas were not merely philosophical, they were spiritual maps, practical guides to understanding the consequences of life, choices, and knowledge itself. Yet much of this wisdom vanished, suppressed by those who sought to control what people could see and believe about the ultimate destiny of the human soul. What if the afterlife isn't simply a place, but a process, a journey influenced by hidden beings, by cosmic hierarchies, and by the knowledge or ignorance we carry in life? Some of these Gnostic texts, long forgotten or hidden in dusty manuscripts, reveal that there are thresholds and challenges for every soul, and that understanding them changes everything we think we know about death, purpose, and divine justice. Jonas, one of the few modern scholars to deeply explore these teachings, shows us that what was once considered heresy may actually hold keys to the most profound spiritual revelations, keys that could alter the way we live and even how we approach the moment of passing itself. As we explore this hidden knowledge today, ask yourself, are you ready to question what you've always believed? Can you entertain the possibility that death is not an end, but a revealing of truths that have been carefully hidden? Throughout this journey, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments. Do you feel ready to face these revelations? Or does the idea stir fear or curiosity within you? Your reflections are part of uncovering these secrets, and they help build a community of seekers who are willing to look beyond the familiar, beyond the safe, into the very heart of hidden wisdom. If you are ready to see what has been hidden for centuries, to uncover the secrets that might change your understanding of life and death forever, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Here, we dive into mysteries that challenge everything. And by joining us, you are keeping alive a tradition of seekers who refuse to accept the surface as the whole truth. In the blocks ahead, we will reveal the lost Gnostic teachings, explore what happens to the soul after death, and uncover the hidden judgments that Jonas illuminates. Prepare yourself. The reality you thought you knew may be only the beginning. For centuries, the wisdom about the soul's journey after death has been shrouded in secrecy, buried beneath the weight of official doctrines and the authority of religious institutions. The Gnostics, an early spiritual movement, recorded their insights about life, death, and the cosmos in texts that were never meant for the masses. They believed that ordinary understanding was limited, that the apparent reality we see is a carefully constructed illusion, and that after death, souls encounter forces most people never even imagine. Yet, over time, these teachings were systematically erased, labeled heretical, and replaced with simplified narratives of heaven and hell, reward and punishment. Why would such profound insights be hidden? Some scholars suggest it was fear that humans armed with this knowledge would challenge authority, break free from imposed moral structures, and question the very foundation of organized religion. The truths about the soul, the archons, and the intricate journey after death were considered too dangerous, too liberating, to allow to circulate freely. Jonas, a modern scholar deeply invested in understanding Gnostic philosophy, highlights that this concealment was not accidental. The Gnostics warned that the material world itself is dominated by the demiurge, a lesser cosmic power who enforces ignorance and traps souls in cycles of rebirth and limitation. By controlling the narrative around death, mainstream institutions inadvertently, or perhaps deliberately, kept humanity in a state of spiritual unawareness. This is not a story of evil for the sake of evil. It is the story of power and preservation. When knowledge is controlled, so too is the destiny of those who are unaware. The writings that survived, like those found among the Nag Hammadi library, are fragments of a once vast body of knowledge, whispers of a truth that could reveal the cosmic machinery of life, death, and the afterlife. Imagine a world in which most people never question what happens when the body dies, never consider the unseen forces that guide or obstruct the soul, and never confront the possibility that life is a preparation for a complex spiritual journey. This was precisely the environment in which the Gnostic teachings were suppressed. They spoke of archons guardians who block the soul's ascent, of hidden realms that test understanding, and of divine sparks trapped within human consciousness. To the Gnostics, death was not merely a passage to a final resting place. It was an unveiling of reality, an encounter with forces that would judge, challenge, and potentially liberate the soul. By removing these teachings from public consciousness, the custodians of power ensured that the majority remained spiritually blind, unable to navigate the very truths that the Gnostics considered essential. The problem, then, is not only historical, but deeply personal. Every one of us is born into a world shaped by these omissions, taught to accept simplified doctrines that leave the soul unprepared for what comes next. If we accept only the surface teachings, we risk walking into the afterlife unaware of the trials, the thresholds, and the hidden judgments that may await. Hans Jonas' work shines a light on the deliberate distortion, inviting us to question, what if the reality of death is far more intricate than anyone has dared to tell us? What if the journey after life is not guided solely by morality or faith in the conventional sense, but by knowledge, awareness, and understanding of forces long concealed? As we move forward, consider this. How might your own life change if you were aware of these hidden forces now, before death? What choices might you make differently, knowing that the journey of the soul is fraught with encounters that few understand, and that liberation depends not only on belief, but on Gnosis true knowledge? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because reflecting together is part of uncovering the forgotten wisdom. In the next block, we will dive into the historical texts and discoveries that reveal these lost teachings, showing exactly what the Gnostics knew about the afterlife and why it was considered so dangerous to ordinary understanding. The story of the soul after death begins not in churches or modern textbooks, but in the fragile manuscripts and codices preserved against the odds for centuries. Among the most significant discoveries are the Nag Hammadi texts, unearthed in 1945 in Upper Egypt, which contain fragments of Gnostic wisdom that had been buried, forgotten, or deliberately hidden. These texts reveal a vision of the afterlife that is profoundly different from the conventional narratives of reward and punishment. The Gnostics described realms of existence, layered like veils, thresholds that the soul must navigate, and guardians archons, whose role was to intercept, test, or mislead souls. Some scholars believe these archons were considered both metaphysical and psychological forces, representing not only cosmic rulers, but also the illusions and attachments that trap consciousness. Unlike the simple binaries of heaven and hell, the Gnostic vision presents the afterlife as a journey shaped by knowledge, awareness, and spiritual discernment. Hans Jonas, who devoted much of his life to studying Gnostic philosophy, emphasizes that these texts are not mere allegories. They were meant to prepare initiates for the realities of the soul's journey. For example, the Apocryphon of John explains that after death, the soul must pass through layers of reality controlled by the demiurge and his archons. Each layer tests the soul's understanding, its connection to the divine spark within, and its ability to recognize what is real versus what is illusory. Some Gnostic writings suggest that ignorance can trap the soul, forcing it to reincarnate or wander through spiritual limbo until it awakens to gnosis. By contrast, knowledge gnosis provides the key to liberation, allowing the soul to ascend past the archons and return to the fullness of the divine, a state the Gnostics called pleroma. This is a stark contrast to the common conception of afterlife as simply a final judgment based on moral behavior. These revelations are not confined to obscure texts. Echoes of the Gnostic vision appear in other early Christian and Jewish mystical writings, such as the Dead Sea Scrolls, which reference secret knowledge and hidden paths of the soul. Archaeological discoveries and careful scholarly analysis have revealed that early spiritual movements often emphasized inner experience and understanding over external rituals. The Gnostics saw the physical world as a shadow, a place where the divine spark was trapped, and death as the moment when this spark could either be liberated or remain ensnared. Hans Jonas explains that understanding this framework radically changes how we interpret death. It is not simply an event to fear or accept passively, but a journey to approach with awareness, preparation, and recognition of the forces at play. Symbols, too, play a crucial role in Gnostic teachings. The demiurge, often depicted as a blind creator, represents the force that enforces ignorance and illusion. Archons, sometimes imagined as celestial rulers or cosmic gatekeepers, embody the mechanisms that can hinder or mislead the soul. Even the divine feminine appears in these texts as a guiding principle, a spark of wisdom and mercy that can aid the soul in navigating the afterlife. By decoding these symbols, we begin to understand a reality that was intentionally obscured, that life and death are intertwined with knowledge, perception, and spiritual insight, and that the ordinary teachings we receive may prepare us for only a fraction of the journey. As we consider these texts, ask yourself, how might your understanding of life and death change if you realize that what awaits is not merely heaven or hell, but an intricate journey through hidden realms, guided by knowledge and the choices we make in life? How would this affect the way you live, the way you seek wisdom, and the way you prepare your own soul? Share your reflections in the comments, because contemplating these ancient truths together is part of reclaiming the hidden knowledge that has been buried for centuries. In the next block, we will break down the symbols, concepts, and forces described by the Gnostics, making the mysterious clear, and showing how the lost teachings of Hans Jonas illuminate the real mechanics of the soul's passage after death. To truly grasp the Gnostic vision of the afterlife, we must understand the language they used, symbols, concepts, and archetypes that at first seem strange but carry deep meaning. Central to this understanding is the concept of gnosis, which the Gnostics defined as direct knowledge of the divine, an inner awakening that allows the soul to recognize its true origin. Without gnosis, the soul becomes vulnerable to deception, lost in illusions that masquerade as reality. Hans Jonas explains that gnosis is not merely intellectual knowledge, but a living awareness, an intuitive understanding of the cosmos and one's place within it. It is what enables the soul to navigate the hidden structures of the afterlife, to pass through layers of existence that the unprepared cannot perceive. Another fundamental concept is the demiurge, a figure described as a lesser creator who governs the material world. Unlike the benevolent God often taught in mainstream religion, the demiurge is blind to the fullness of divine truth and often imposes order that traps souls in ignorance. In Gnostic cosmology, the demiurge is responsible for creating the illusions that bind human consciousness, making the soul forget its divine origin and leading it to misinterpret the spiritual journey. Scholars believe that this representation is both literal and symbolic. It shows the dangers of being attached to worldly concerns, thinking that physical existence alone defines reality, and remaining unaware of the higher realms awaiting beyond death. Then there are the archons, the cosmic guardians or rulers who monitor and challenge the soul as it ascends after death. Each archon represents a threshold, a test of understanding, and a reflection of the obstacles that ignorance, fear, and attachment create. Gnostics taught that these entities could be both external and internal, showing themselves in the form of psychological illusions, societal norms, or spiritual distractions that mislead souls from their path. Hans Jonas interprets these archons as mechanisms that enforce the cycle of entrapment, making the afterlife a journey that demands vigilance, clarity, and the courage to see beyond appearances. The divine feminine is another essential aspect, often appearing as a liberating force or guiding principle. In many texts, the divine feminine is portrayed as the spirit of wisdom, the nurturer and protector of the soul, who helps it recognize the traps of the demiurge and the archons. She represents mercy, intuition, and connection to the true source of light, the pleroma. Through her guidance, the soul learns to distinguish reality from illusion, truth from deception, and liberation from entrapment. The Gnostics saw this as essential for survival in the afterlife. The journey was not just about passing judgment, but about awakening to the divine spark within oneself. Consider this. What if the afterlife is less about reward or punishment, and more about encountering these forces, recognizing the illusions, and navigating thresholds that test awareness and understanding? How would knowing about the demiurge, the archons, and the divine feminine alter the way you perceive life and death? These symbols are not abstract. They are guides, warnings, and tools for preparation. They teach us that every decision, every moment of awareness, and every effort to understand the hidden layers of existence directly impacts the soul's journey. Take a moment to reflect and share your thoughts in the comments. Which of these forces feels most real to you, and how does it resonate with your experiences in life? For centuries, the hidden knowledge of the Gnostics was systematically distorted, reshaped, and even erased by the very institutions that claimed to protect spiritual truth. Mainstream religious authorities, seeking to consolidate power and unify doctrine, viewed the Gnostic teachings as a threat. The intricate understanding of the soul's journey, the demiurge, the archons, and the divine feminine challenged the simplistic moral frameworks that kept populations compliant and unquestioning. By labeling these teachings heretical, suppressing texts, and rewriting narratives, these authorities effectively removed humanity's access to profound spiritual insights. Some scholars, including Hans Jonas, argue that this was not merely an act of censorship, but a deliberate attempt to control the understanding of life, death, and cosmic justice, ensuring that only a sanctioned version of truth remained accessible. The consequences of this distortion are profound. When knowledge of the soul's post-mortem journey is hidden, people approach death with fear, confusion, or passive acceptance. They lack the tools to recognize the forces, both internal and external, that shape their spiritual path. The Gnostics warned that ignorance allows the demiurge and the archons to maintain their grip, trapping souls in cycles of illusion and reincarnation. Without gnosis, the afterlife becomes a maze of unseen barriers, challenges, and tests. Yet, history also shows a turning point. Despite centuries of suppression, fragments of Gnostic wisdom survived in hidden manuscripts, codices, and oral traditions. This rediscovery, particularly through modern scholarship and the work of Hans Jonas, allows us to reconnect with insights that were long considered lost. Jonas explains that these revelations are not abstract philosophies. They provide practical guidance for living and dying with awareness. They show that the soul's journey is influenced by knowledge, intention, and discernment. When we understand the hidden architecture of the afterlife, the thresholds, the archons, and the role of the divine spark, we can approach death not as a passive fate, but as a conscious transition. This turning point, the reemergence of lost teachings, marks a shift from ignorance to empowerment, from fear to understanding. It allows us to reclaim a part of our spiritual heritage, one that equips the soul to navigate the hidden realms that await after death. Reflect for a moment. How does it feel to realize that what you were taught about life and death might be incomplete, or even deliberately simplified? Can you imagine the impact of facing the afterlife with knowledge instead of ignorance, with insight instead of fear? These are not abstract ideas. They are invitations to awaken, to see beyond the surface, and to reclaim a perspective that has been obscured for millennia. By questioning the narratives you've always accepted, you begin to engage in a process of self-discovery and spiritual preparation that directly influences your destiny. The teachings that were hidden for centuries are not only historical curiosities, they have profound implications for the way we live today. Hans Jonas and the Gnostics remind us that understanding the soul's journey after death is a tool for conscious living, not merely a matter of speculation. Every choice, every attachment, every moment of awareness shapes the trajectory of the soul. When we recognize the forces that can mislead or trap us, the modern equivalents of the demiurge and the archons, we begin to approach life with a different perspective. We see that fear, obsession, and blind conformity are not just personal struggles, but echoes of the spiritual challenges that have existed for millennia. Knowledge, insight, and discernment become the instruments by which we navigate the visible and invisible realms simultaneously. Imagine perceiving life as a preparation for something greater, understanding that the obstacles and illusions we encounter are part of a larger test of awareness. The Gnostics teach that by cultivating gnosis, by awakening to hidden realities, we can align ourselves with the divine spark within, making every action a conscious choice rather than a reaction to illusion. In practical terms, this could mean questioning societal norms that limit understanding, seeking knowledge that expands perception, and cultivating inner clarity to recognize when external forces attempt to shape our beliefs or desires. The soul's liberation is not reserved for the afterlife. It begins here and now in how we live and understand ourselves. These teachings also invite reflection on mortality, urging us to approach death not with fear, but with preparation and insight. The archons, the guardians of thresholds, may seem like distant metaphors, yet they symbolize the very real psychological and spiritual challenges that arise at critical moments in life and at the point of transition. By understanding them, we equip ourselves with awareness, enabling choices that preserve the soul's integrity and prepare it for the unseen journey ahead. Hans Jonas emphasizes that this knowledge transforms the ordinary perception of death from a passive inevitability into an opportunity for conscious passage, for navigating thresholds with understanding and clarity. Take a moment now to consider how this knowledge could reshape your own life. What patterns of thought, attachment, or fear might be acting as unseen archons, limiting your spiritual growth? How might cultivating awareness, seeking hidden truths, and connecting with your inner spark change the way you act, relate to others, or face uncertainty? Some Gnostic texts suggest that even small awakenings in life accumulate, strengthening the soul's capacity to traverse the afterlife's hidden realms. Engaging with this wisdom today allows you to begin reclaiming the knowledge that was suppressed, transforming your experience of life and death alike. Reflect on this deeply. The revelations are not just theoretical, they are a call to action. To truly honor these lost teachings, consider sharing your insights or questions in the comments. Even a single reflection can become part of a living dialogue that revives the hidden wisdom, connecting seekers across time and space. As we approach the final block, Block 7, we will summarize the ultimate revelations, drawing together the threads of the Gnostic vision, and show how participating in this search for knowledge becomes an act of preserving truth, awakening the soul, and joining a community of fellow seekers ready to uncover what was once forbidden. After centuries of concealment, the lost Gnostic teachings revealed by Hans Jonas offer a profound glimpse into what truly happens after death. We have journeyed together through the hidden layers of existence, explored the forces of the demiurge and the archons, and understood the guiding light of the divine feminine. We have seen that the afterlife is not a simple destination, but a complex passage shaped by knowledge, awareness, and spiritual discernment. These teachings are not merely historical curiosities. They are living wisdom that challenges us to question what we have been told, to examine our lives with clarity, and to awaken the soul to its true potential. By understanding the hidden mechanisms that govern the journey after death, we gain the power to navigate life with insight, to recognize illusions, and to prepare consciously for the ultimate transition. This revelation invites a deep reflection. How does knowing about the archons, the demiurge, and the thresholds of the soul change the way you perceive your choices, your fears, and your attachments? Are you willing to confront the illusions that have shaped your life and to reclaim the inner knowledge that can guide your soul? Engaging with these teachings is an act of liberation. It connects us with a lineage of seekers who refuse to accept surface truths and encourages us to cultivate awareness, understanding, and discernment in every moment. Sharing your thoughts in the comments, reflecting on your experiences, and questioning the familiar narratives becomes a form of participation in this ancient, ongoing quest for truth. Consider the implications. Each reflection, each insight is a step toward awakening. By joining this community, by commenting, liking, and subscribing, you are not only keeping alive the memory of hidden truths, you are actively participating in a living tradition of seekers. You are affirming that the search for understanding, the exploration of the soul's journey, and the reclamation of knowledge suppressed for centuries are not just theoretical pursuits, but essential paths to spiritual freedom. Every voice matters in this dialogue. Every reflection strengthens the collective awareness, and every engagement helps preserve the wisdom that was once nearly lost. As we close, I leave you with a question that continues beyond this video. If the soul's journey after death depends on knowledge and discernment, how are you preparing yourself today to face the thresholds that await? What truths are you ready to uncover about your own life, your consciousness, and the unseen forces that shape existence? The search does not end here. It is an ongoing journey, a continual awakening that calls us to explore, question, and grow. Remember that the lost Gnostic teachings are more than secrets. They are a map to understanding the soul, a guide to navigating life and death with awareness, and an invitation to awaken the divine spark within you.